Yeah, hi folks. Now, if there's one thing I've learnt from Trump, it is this. Never ever appease or apologise to the woke cancel culture left. If you do, they'll hound you forever. And the same applies to appeasing the woke climate change left. If you do, they'll hound you forever. And that is exactly what the New Zealand farmers did back in May. They appeased Ardern. They made an agreement with her. And now the full truth about that agreement is being realised.
Tēnā tātou katoa, good evening. Farmers all over the country walked off the paddock today and took their tractors to town to protest the government's proposed emissions tax.
The Groundswell Group doesn't want to pay tax and doesn't want to pay the tax and wants out of the emissions trading scheme altogether. Alexa Cook reports.
They came in droves, driving off the paddocks and into the city, descending on central Auckland with a clear message.
Stop the planned agricultural emissions tax and undo the legislation to put farming into the ETS.
Yes, you're exactly right, but that's the price you pay for getting into bed with Ardern. And now all New Zealanders will have to pay in one way, shape or form.
Telling the government they've had enough.
Well, guess what? We're not going to take it.
In Palmerston North, they paraded their prized machinery through the city centre, bringing dogs and unconventional props. Farmers worried the proposed emissions tax will rip the guts out of rural New Zealand.
It certainly will.
Look around you. Every fifth farmer you see here today will be gone by 2030.
The farming tax is ridiculous. It's going to kill our industry.
There were fewer protesters in Wellington, but they were just as loud.
Farmers want to be heard in that, we care for our farms, we care for our livelihoods, and we actually care for the environment.
The protesters might not support the current plan for tax, but they do support lowering emissions.
When are they going to stop appeasing these pricks? They don't pollute, China does.
Although they want to do it through on-farm actions rather than more tax.
We do our bit. We plant trees and we look after our environment.
If other people lose their farms, they might be a bit sad too. Also, I don't like vegetables.
And farmers say vegetable prices will increase if the tax goes ahead.
It's going to hike food prices even more than what they already are.
My focus is on working constructively with our food producers to get the best possible outcome for them and for New Zealand.
So that's why you signed the EU Free Trade Agreement that includes this.
But beyond economic benefits, this agreement has very important innovations to bring just and green growth. It hits several firsts. For example, it includes sanctionable commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement.
Sanctionable commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. Did you hear that, folks? Our farmers are stuffed, and so are we.
This is the very first time that we take such commitments in a trade deal, the very first time. And it contains, again, for the first time, provisions on fossil fuels. This clearly reflects our common goal of reducing fossil fuel subsidies and reforming fossil fuel subsidies, in particular through the WTO. And we show the same ambition on core international labour standards and on gender equality to advance women's economic empowerment. So this agreement will bring major benefits to our economies, but also to our societies.
And the following video also applies to the EU.
There's two types of people who are involved in politics. I mean, broad generalization. One, the people you would call lifetime actors, who are selected from a very, very early age, and they are groomed to become world leaders. I mean, Trudeau would be one of them. I would suspect that Jacinda Ardern would be another one. Whether he is a man or woman, I don't know. But that horse thing would have been selected from a very early age to be the leader, to be running Kiwiland right now. Same with the Trudeau. There's the other type of person who goes into politics with the best of intentions and realizes that in order to get on, they've either got to sacrifice all their principles and just do what they're told, or they realize they're never going to get promoted. They end up on what in the UK are called the backbenches of Parliament, achieving nothing. They don't get into cabinet positions. They have no influence. Those are the choices. So it's inevitable that politics will always corrupt. That's the thing. It only requires people to be puppets of I call them the predator class, the elites who really control the world. That they call the shots. They make the decisions at organizations like Bilderberg, the World Economic Forum, the Club of Rome, you name it, the United Nations.
And the EU. Our farmers didn't have a chance. Ardern sold us all down the drain, to the global elites.
My focus is on working constructively with our food producers to get the best possible outcome for them and for New Zealand.
So this is how you work constructively with farmers.
Yeah, there's 2 points there, I think, that we're talking about the community, but also how this is going to impact farmers, which will, if it impacts farmers, it's obviously going to have an impact on the community. Yeah. But can we go back to those concerns that farmers have? What are they in particular from that government announcement yesterday?
Pretty much, the modelled outcome that for sheep and beef, there's going to be a 20% reduction in farm profitability, and that's, if in effect, it create a sort of 20% reduction in the number of sheep farms.
Yeah, so up go food prices.
And so that's, for a lot of sheep and beef farmers, the profitability can really vary. Some years will be a good year, other years not so good. It's much tighter margins than, say, for me and George in the dairy sector. And so, that's a major concern for them. And, they're already fairly well concerned about the afforestation that's happening across their communities. And they just feel that this is going to speed this up, ramp it up, and, like I say in the press release, sort of rip the guts out of rural communities.
Can we go back to the forestation part? Because my understanding about that is that the more trees that are planted on your land, obviously you can't use that for whatever you're farming on your land. So is that the big problem? Is the problem that, I guess sequestering is the other part of that?
Yeah, so in other words, forcing farmers to plant trees on a portion of their land.
But when you're talking about forestation, just explain to us why that's a huge issue.
Well, I guess the key issue here isn't that a farmer might want to plant part of their land in trees. Many would probably prefer to do it, in natives and get some biodiversity back on the farm. But it's when you've got the likes of IKEA, whoever, coming into the auction for the farm, and someone's retiring and they're just buying up entire farms and planting them in trees.
So now the dots are connecting. This is why Ardern supports certain corporate elites.
Wood is one of the main materials that IKEA uses, and it plays a major role in our commitment to becoming climate positive. Wood is beautiful, it's durable and sustainable, provided that it is responsibly sourced. For many years, IKEA has been committed to using our size and global reach to drive responsible forest management practices, both for our own wood use and for the wider forestry sector. Today, more than 98% of wood used for IKEA products are FSC certified or recycled. Earlier this year, the IKEA Forest Positive Agenda for 2030 was announced, where we are ramping up our work to further enhance biodiversity, mitigate climate change, and support the rights and the needs of people who depend on forests.
Now, folks, I recorded the following yesterday. IKEA's owners buying 1,118 hectares for forestry. Companies associated with Inca Group, the largest franchisee of IKEA stores internationally, have received consent to buy more sheep and beef farming land in the south to convert to forestry. Yesterday, the Overseas Investment Office released its April decisions, including a successful application by Inca Investments, Forest Assets New Zealand and Inca Investment Management New Zealand from the Netherlands to acquire about 1,118 hectares of land on Coneburn Road at Waimumu. The applicants were owned by Inca Investment BV, which is Dutch for Limited, the investment arm of Inca Group, one of 12 different groups of companies that own the Swedish furniture and homeware giant. Now this is our future, folks.
Remember the famous recipe? An entire generation learned how to say it in under 4 seconds.
If you can say 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun in 4 seconds, you can win a free cup of Coke. It's that simple. Just say
it's 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Well, that's all out the drive-through window now. In the interests of cutting down our methane emissions, in line with Labour's plan to save the planet from catastrophic climate change, here's the new Outsiders. Plant-based, climate-friendly, carbon-neutral, methane-free Big Mac recipe. Your kids will have hours of fun practicing. 2 all-bug patties, crispy kale, lettuce, fleas, crickets, roaches on a methane-free bun.
Learn it off by heart, kiddies. Remember, it's 2 old bug patties, crispy kale, lettuce, fleas, crickets, roaches on a methane-free bun.
That's right. Yummy! I can hardly wait. 2 all bug patties, crispy kale, lettuce, fleas, crickets, roaches on a methane-free bun.
My focus is on working constructively with our food producers to get the best possible outcome for them and for New Zealand.
There's a major set of challenges that the government's got, and we don't support them whatsoever. We back our farmers.
No, you don't.
Well, National Leader Christopher Luxon is here for our weekly catch-up in studio with us with lots to discuss. Morena, Mr Luxon.
Good morning, good to be with you.
Good to have you with us. We're going to start off with Labour and the Greens announced their plan yesterday to reduce farmers' carbon emissions. What are your main concerns about the proposal?
Well, look, I mean, what the government announced yesterday is really unacceptable. It's a build on what the industry solution was back in May, but, there's 3 big challenges with it.
Yeah, so did you hear that, folks? He didn't say, I'll scrap it. He just says there are 3 big challenges with it. So essentially, he agrees with it.
What it's saying is that 1/5 of our sheep and beef farmers and 5% of our dairy production will be gone by 2030. That's a big problem for New Zealand because, that sector employs 350,000 people and it generates $10,000 for every man, woman and child in this country. So,
correct.
So what are we going to do about that loss of income? The second part to it is that there's a huge, our farmers are the most carbon efficient in the world, and what we're going to be doing is moving moving production offshore to less carbon efficient farms and countries.
Correct.
And as a result, global emissions actually worsen through that period. And the third thing I think is really unfair is that farmers on farm are doing lots of good things to be able to offset their emissions, and they should get 100% credit for it. So things like windbreaks, things like riparian planting, and other things about carbon capture, they should be able to see those things so that it's equal, that they get the best shot that they can to offset that. So, it's incredibly worrying. We trust and back our farmers. I talk to farmers every week. They understand they need to reduce emissions. They understand they ultimately need to price for emissions. We need to continue to invest in research and development. But this proposal, as it stands today, I think breaks apart the industry consensus that we had before.
So essentially he agrees with it. Tinker around the edges. Typical National.
Those farmers out in force in the South Island too. Of the 56 convoys nationwide, Christchurch was perhaps the most colourful.
We're going to have lots of hungry people because they can't afford the food.
Further south in Dunedin City, locals turned up in support. Groundswell's given the government until the end of the month to respond to its demands, or else.
We could be doing this 3 or 4 more times before the election.
And that won't make a damn bit of difference. as National is essentially on the same page, and Ardern knows that. You need to lock down the beehive for months on end to make any meaningful difference. Anyway, I'll finish with this video today, and hat tip to Peter Rhodes for pointing me to this story. The Dutch government takes farmland for immigrants, whereas our government takes farmland for trees.
Here, Ava. This sounds even too crazy for the crazies who govern us. But Dutch farmers are to be forced to sell their farms to the government and get out of the farming business.
Yes, you'd think it is too crazy to be true, but it's not too crazy because our government consists of a bunch of inhumane, greedy liars and thieves. So it's very much what we are dealing with right now. And, the protests that the Dutch farmers have been putting up since the summer have not changed their minds because obviously, like I said, these people are thieves and liars and they have their eyes on these farmers' land. So what they did is they came up with a new report in response to the protests, so to say, and instead of changing anything, they just changed the tone. So now they are pushing through, they are ramping it up, and actually the outcome of the new report is worse. So like you said, they are going to forcefully buy out 600 farms in the next year. But it sounds a little nicer in the way that it's written in the little text. So that's it. I really can't say anything else about it. It is theft. They are taking away these people's property. They are taking away their lives. They are taking away businesses that have been in Dutch families for centuries sometimes. And people are becoming desperate. We had a farmer last week, 43-year-old man who killed himself because he said he couldn't take it anymore. And he's not the only one. There are countless of examples like him.
That's heartbreaking. A 43-year-old farmer kills himself because of the government's determination basically to kill Dutch farming. When the state buys 600 farms, what's it going to do? And there's a similar program in the UK and various other countries. But what is the Dutch government going to do with 600 farms?
Well, like they say, of course, that it's because of a nitrogen crisis, which is completely manufactured and made up. We don't have a nitrogen crisis. But what we do have in the Netherlands is a housing crisis, because our government lets in over 100,000 migrants a year, approximately. So obviously, our population is growing, and it's not because the Dutch native people are having a ton of babies. We all know that. So these people need to live somewhere. And there is no space left in the Netherlands. So what will they need to do? They will need to seize some of the land of these farmers in order to house new Dutch people, the newcomers of our country. So that is what this is really about. And of course, there's also the element of our elites not wanting us to have an independent or control over our food supply. And they obviously also don't want us to eat meat. So the farmers are standing in the way of their plans, and that's why they are being targeted right now. But we have to stop engaging in this narrative. Like I said, there is no nitrogen crisis. We have to stop even entertaining the thought.
Anyway, folks, I'll stop it there. And folks, I've posted a link to this below, along with other links as well.